Good morning and welcome, Baruch atah Yahweh, to New Earth Restoration online Shabbat service. Glad to see you here. So I want to start with a little meditation, but one I've been thinking about this week a lot, and that is Yahweh's providence. Providence. Did you ever hear a person say, everything happens for a reason? Probably more times than you can count. On the one hand, I'm glad when someone expresses doubts that purposely or purposeless things happen. After all, someone can quickly move from belief that some things have no purpose to believe that life has no purpose, to believe that nothing has purpose, which bears fruit in suicide or illogical behavior, at least. On the other hand, I know when people confess that everything happens for a reason, they usually don't have the right reason in mind. Usually they're just admitting belief that fate controls everything. But how can fate have a reason for everything? Purpose comes only from persons who make a plan, then follow it. If everything happens for a reason, something or someone must know what that reason is. As believers, we know that everything happens for a reason because Elohim has created all things and has a plan for all happenings. Elohim, after all, is sovereign over all, such that even a sparrow can't fall to the ground apart from Elohim's will. He works out all things, not just some things, according to the counsel of his will. And this is what we call providence. He provides. Elohim has a plan and purpose for this world and governs history such that everything from the least to the greatest contributes to the achievement of that plan and that purpose. Yah isn't merely a passive observer of history. Rather, he's designated history to achieve a particular end, and he directs history so that it will surely reach that end eventually in his time, though maybe not in ours. All believers hold some wisdom of Yahweh's providence because we know that Elohim rules over all. I don't know any believers who deny that Yahweh is in control of big things like elections, hurricanes, world wars. However, in this kind of providence, we're not limiting Elohim's control to only the major events in history. We can't. But I'm talking about even the smallest things, some of which we consider to be great because they affect our lives. Proverbs 16:33 has, "The die is cast into the lap, but every decision is from Yahweh." A roll of the die seems to have a random result, but this ain't so. The result of each roll is exactly what the sovereign has ordained. But for Elohim to get the result of the die roll that is ordained, a lot of stuff has to happen. It has to be thrown with just the right amount of force. Too much, and the die tumbles past. Too little, and it doesn't tumble at all. He has to regulate an arm to get the results he intends. If there's a little breeze, the force of the air is going to play a part in the outcome. The movement of the air is related to the temperature of the room, which is related to the movement of air molecules, which is determined by the atoms in the molecules, and ultimately by subatomic particles. All things must work for capital G good to result in our Savior's benevolent will to be done. I know it's an oversimplification, but once you get to the subatomic level, things really get complicated. It's far too high for you or I, or any creature of this world. There's not one maverick molecule operating outside the sovereign control and direction of the Creator, not one. Oh, they can't be. For if the tiniest thing were to go astray, the cascading effects would change everything. And we know that there's no such thing as chance unless he allows that. This kind of understanding should dramatically reframe our view of everyday life. Most of us, we're not very important in the eyes of the world. Nobody seems to care that much. We'll have a lasting influence on maybe a handful of individuals, but after we transform, we're quickly forgotten. Because of this, it's too easy to think our actions don't matter, or that Elohim isn't that much involved. We might think he's involved in the affairs of world leaders, but certainly he hasn't time enough to pay attention to the rest of us, changing diapers, working long hours, paying bills, sacrificing to make this weekly service, listening to Mother telling the same story 5 times a day, or simply awaiting our demise. But Elohim's providence tells us otherwise. Providence means not only that he's governing and directing all things, but also that he's sustaining all things, including our lives, and whatever is important to his children. We read that through Yahshua. He upholds the universe by the word of his power. He not only created all things, but he preserves all things. And if he didn't, or if he took a minute off, everything that is, including us, would immediately vanish to nothingness. At every moment, we're completely dependent upon Elohim's continuing sustenance to his creation. The universe doesn't continue on its own power. We may rightly infer that Yahweh thinks there's something awfully important about everything in creation, even the things we consider most mundane. Yet our Maker doesn't waste time and energy on trivial things. The very fact that he sustains even us in our ordinary lives and decisions means we are of great value to his ultimate plan. To put it another way, Elohim's providence is very much an everyday reality, and his answers and his sustenance usward show us how very important we are to him and to the future world he's imaging, especially that. And my friends, the power behind his ability to do all this, think that power is love. And that power shines through a demonstration we all know that he sent his son to save those who choose, like you, like me. Amen. Okay, Brother Holsapple.
All right, brother. Shalom, shalom. And I want to give my praise report too. Last night we was coming home and it was right at dark, and really, that time where you really can't see that good. And again, it's all praise to Yahweh. We're driving down the road and there was this boy there, and he's probably 16 years old. And this is on a highway. He's walking right down the highway. And so, he pulled up there and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what he was on, but he was just walking straight down the road." And we got him to get off the road. We kind of followed him around and he went into a store, but we never know what can happen. So, when we have these things, when we have those moments, praise Yahweh that someone can be there, someone can help them out, and someone can be there for them. Because I was just like, wow, because there was a car a little bit behind me, and it was just like, I didn't want to see him get ran into or get ran over right in front of me. So we were just trying to praying, and we just want to praise Yahweh for that. So with all that being said, that we never know. Today I'm going to try to go over Yeshua the light and everything that brother was talking about there, everything that was going on is a part of our life and a part of what we're doing. And yes, you ain't going to have to worry about some big words today, like Brother Jackson. I try to keep it simple, just like me, I guess. But, when we go and we talk to others, sometimes just the heart of the matter is what matters, and how we talk to them. What I found in the last 3 years, if you know about me and Stephanie, it's been a rough road. It's a roller coaster. It's a battle, and not a battle that I would choose, to be honest. Stephanie is more on the faithful side, and we're here for a reason. We ran into Brother Dennis. He was so faithful here. He showed up. I don't think he missed 3 months in a row, and he was in some bad situations. He was really had bone cancer, but he was so faithful, and he was so knowing where he was going, and he got immersed there. We just don't know what tomorrow brings, but within all of this, I think we can see Yeshua working in us. I think that's where, churchianity is failing, that they point to the cross, and that's it. They just sit there on the pew of the cross, and that's all there is to it, and everything's done for them. Everything's said and done. That's where we show that we are working, and through our lives, just like I believe everyone here, whether it's anger management or upset management or depression management, and we are not together physically, so we can't hug each other's neck. I can't give Brother Emerson a big hug. I can't go, sit down face to face, but we can hear, we can praise Yahweh, help each other out. We can still call each other and get to know each other. And I believe we see this so much in these scriptures. I believe we see what Yeshua is trying to tell us, that we are a failure. I am a failure, and once we get over that manly or womanly Wonder Woman style thing, that I think we can learn more. I think we can actually get closer to him and understand, without the Messiah, just like Brother Jackson said, without the Messiah, we're in trouble. Without the Messiah and what his words in the Torah, we would be lost. We would be so far out that there would be no reconciliation. There would be nothing there for us. When we see this, when we look at this and we put that together, I believe that's where we find so much of why we need him, and why he did these things, and why he did what he did, and the parables he said, and all these that we go over. So with all that, let's get started. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Yeshua sent out 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her coat beside her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone questions you, tell him that the master needs them, and he will send them right away." Yeshua's always working, just like Brother Jackson said earlier. He's always working. He's always about doing something. If he wasn't, again, I wouldn't be here. I would have probably been in one of the multiple wars, one of the multiple skirmishes. We just never know. And sadly, because we don't know, sometimes I think we take those things for granted. We take for granted that we are here. Those ups and downs, we understand how precious this life is and how important it is. And we personally have found out in the last few years, going to these places, how important it is. And not for me, a lot of people, they hear this and it's like I'm boasting. I'm not boasting. I'm boasting about Yeshua. I'm boasting about Yahweh, because without us going to these places, who would be able to hear this message? Who could go and hear the kingdom is here? And I believe that's what Yeshua is telling us here. He sent the disciples. He didn't say, hey, maybe, hey, kind of do this, hey, if you feel like it. When you get around to it, he was always on a mission. He was always He knew his purpose. Now, sadly, a lot of times we don't know our purpose, or we're learning our purpose, and that can be a lifelong thing. There's nothing wrong about not knowing where you belong and not knowing where you fit in, because obviously we don't fit in the world. I think that's the problem. A lot of times we're trying to fit into something that we don't fit into. We're trying to be a part of something that is not a part of us. And we see this clearly through the scriptures. This took place to fulfill that what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So right here, Yeshua is doing what? Fulfilling scriptures. He is fulfilling the very scriptures in Zechariah, right? He's fulfilling what was to come, what they prophesied would happen. Now, I would submit to you that why can't we do the same things? He says we're going to do these, right? This is what Yeshua told us. He said, you're going to raise the dead, heal the sick. You're going to do these things. So what I would submit is the reason why we get stuck on things or we stumble on things is because the enemy knows if he can put something between us, then how many people get hurt? How many people are going to stumble? How many people are going to have a problem? If I don't end up where I'm supposed to be, then that person could have very well got run over last night. If I'm not over here at the cancer center, we would have never met Brother Dennis. So in me personally, I kind of got the attitude of Jonah on some of this, right? It's like Jonah's getting on the boat, and I think sometimes that's in all of us. I don't want to be at the cancer center. I don't want to be at this place. I don't want to be at that. But looking back at the time when you're in tears and crying, I just don't want to be there. This ain't for me. This ain't what I signed up for. This ain't what churchianity told me I was going to be a part of, right? This is not where I belong. So in a way, you think you're being failed or something's happening. And I'm trying to make this as, kind of personal as I can as well. And sometimes that gets a little bit not professional looking, but I just want everyone to know that when you're in a situation and when you're in that part of your life, it may not be the best part. You may not understand, but he tells us, lean not to your own understanding. He tells us to go forth. And we see in Yeshua that he went through these things and he just kept going. They wanted to kill him. They wanted to stone him. They was continually wanting to get rid of him. But yet we see in scriptures, they called him a prophet. They considered him a prophet. They considered John a prophet. And even within the questions, they would ask him questions and he would say, okay, well, answer my question then. Is John, is his baptism, is it from man or is it from? And they couldn't have an answer because they didn't know what to say. And sometimes not having an answer proves to us we need to go back to the scriptures. We need to go back and we need to look in the mirror and we need to find out what's going on. So many times, and I think everyone here has probably come out of something that looks like a Sunday church or Roman Catholic church or something of that nature. And it's not a good feeling to find the truth. We seem to think everybody wants the truth. Everybody wants to hear the truth. Sometimes that's not so happy days, right? When we find these different teachings and we find out the truth is not what I've been taught, that really, really kind of cuts into everything and every fiber that is a part. And knowing that and dropping that, though, it may take a while. It may take a little bit, but dropping what is not true and going forward. And we see they had every chance to do this when Yeshua was talking to them. They had every chance to just drop their ways, their teachings, their whatever, they had in their minds. But why would they? They was the priests, they was the Sanhedrin, they was the Pharisees, they was the it of the. So why would they, drop all that and follow Yeshua? I mean, think about that. Well, I have this big ministry and I have this big thing and I have that. Why would I just drop everything and admit I was wrong? And this is the light, this is the way. And sometimes I think that's where a lot of people stumble, and a lot of congregations and assemblies, that they just have that stumbling block, and they come to a point of where they don't want to learn anymore. They just want to point to the stake, and they want to say that stake was done on the stake, and they want to emulate the Messiah. But if we really are doing that, we know it's a hard road, and it's really, really rough at times, and it depends on where you get sent and where you are. But sometimes dealing with your own problems is about enough as a dealing with the world's problems. But when we are more than conquerors, we're told we're supposed to, Yeshua knew the whole time what his ending was, right? He knew he was going to this stake. There was no doubt about it. He knew about Judas. Could you imagine knowing that Judas is walking with you? Could you imagine knowing that you're going to the stake, and the whole time you're just going to smile and say, look, I'm still going to heal these people. I'm still going to help these people. I think that's a lot for us to learn as well. We know the whole time, this life, this world is not my home. We sang about it, right? This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. But we want to put so many attachments into this world. When we change, that's the perfection. When we change, but if we don't have everything right now, what are we going to do then? We don't want to be trying to fill our basket full of bread when we don't have any loaves, right? When we don't have any oil. If we learn what we need to learn now, and we go through those upsetting factors now, we also look into the treasures of the next life and say, hey, I'm probably going to be doing something. I'm probably going to be helping. I'm probably going to be doing something for the kingdom. Then Yeshua entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. Again, he's rebuking people. He's telling them, you're doing wrong. He overturned the tables of money changers and the seats of those selling doves. And he declared to them, it is written, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. That's what we're looking for, a house of prayer. That's what we need. We need prayers. Just like we have the praise report, we have the prayers. We need a house of prayer in this dark world and all these things going on. They need prayer, whether they know it or not. Whether they need an interceding prayer. Our kids, our children, whoever is around us, who is a part of our life, they need it, right? Brother Finney, we may never know what's going on or what's being hurt or what's happening, but when we're woke up at 3 a.m, probably best time to pray and say, Father, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. The more simpler I am, I think sometimes I find I'm closer to him. Instead of me trying to be something, a lot of times in my life, I've been taught to be a Pentecostal preacher, and therefore pounding the pulpit and telling everybody I'm right and you're wrong. But that's not the way that we see the scriptures. And adjusting to what Yeshua said, adjusting to what he has for us to be the true light of the world, I think that emanates so much into what's going on. The blind and the lame come to him at the temple, and he healed them. But the chief priests and the scribes, they didn't want that, right? They're like, what's going on? Why are you healing people? Could you imagine going somewhere and you're having an assembly and people start getting healed, and they're just like, hey, get out of here. What are you doing here? But we see in aspects the same thing, or I do, when I go to some of these places. It's almost like, let's sit down and have a council against you personally because of your beliefs. But yet you're invited to that party. I was invited to a church in Mississippi, and it was a great time. but they wanted to know the feast days. They wanted to know a little bit of Hebrew. They wanted to know about the Aaronic blessing. They wanted to know about these things. Invited, sat down at the big old long table. But the first thing, there was probably 20, 30 people sitting at this table. And the first thing was, oh, well, you're going to tell me I'm going to hell if I don't keep the Sabbath? No, I didn't come here to judge you. That wasn't even on the memo. Why are we talking about this? You said you want to learn about the feast, but automatically it's let's, stump the chump, if you will. Let's get this guy and see what he's really about. Let's see if we can knock him off. And so did you bring me here? Did you ask me here for that reason? Or did you want to go over scriptures? Praise Yahweh, it became a great thing. It lasted a couple months. They really went into the feast days and learning, and they really wanted to know things. And it turned into a whole side going to someone's house, and the house was full. So we never know what those little things, but if I would have been me, I guess, if I would have been the Army Staff Sergeant guy, I would have said, hey, you know what? This is the way it is, and deal with it. I didn't come to no Sunday church to be put on the, if what would have happened if I would have said that? So I think we need to also watch what comes out. There's life and death in the tongue, and we can justify it. And I've justified it. Yahweh, forgive me. A lot of times I've said things and done things. I'm the prophet. I'm the guy, right? If we're not careful, sometimes that can be is damaging and is hurtful. And we don't understand when we come from a different line, when we come from me personally, like I said, Pentecostal, pound the pulpit and tell them how it is and tell them they're going to hell. And that's how you fill the seats, right? You ain't got to tell them so much how not to go to hell. You just got to tell them they're going to hell. So when you got that mentality, but it needs to be washed away. It needs to be washed away through the Messiah. And a lot of these things that we say are washed away, sometimes we have to think and get into that. And why is this a part of me? And why am I doing this? And would the Messiah say that? Would it be the light? And is it edifying? Because we can edify what we think is going to happen, and it might turn into a train wreck. I know, sometimes I've thought, well, this is going to be a beautiful message. This is going to be a beautiful day. And it turned out not so much so. So we have to be careful in these things as well. It's all in how it comes out, and I think how humble we become. And the closer we get to him, I think we understand more of what he expects and wants from us, and how we are to do these things and not do them in our own will and our own mind. The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. Sometimes that blind and lame and feeling lost, you just feel lost, right? You feel blinded as to what is what. And sometimes it's so overwhelming, especially for newcomers. We come to the Sabbath, we come to the name, we come to this, and we got it figured out. So we're zealous. We're going to tell the world what is what, and not knowing there's a whole bunch of books, right? There's a whole bunch of scriptures. There's still a lot more chapters here that we need to get into. But when we learn Yahweh, when we learn Yeshua, when we learn Sabbath, sometimes that's where that Torah terrorist, that's where we come out, and we're zealous. And the zealous, there's nothing wrong with the zealous part. It's just how to wield that sword and how rightfully to do it. And in most times, again, is going to those who ask and not to those we just, run and talk and talk and talk a whole lot about. Do you hear what these children are saying? They ask. Yes, Yeshua answered. Have you never read, from the mouths of children and infants, you have ordained praise? A lot of times, these children from these assemblies, they know so much. They are so in tune with the Ruach. It's so amazing to see how close they are and how they're not learning these terrible, different traditions of men and how they're not going to be stuck in those things and how they're not going to have to try to just sift through all that nonsense that a lot of times we're sifting through. We're going through and we're trying to figure the truth. And I thought that was the truth. Why is that not the truth? How is that not the truth? And so on and so forth. And in this thing called life, I believe he lets certain things happen so we can humble ourselves and call upon him. If everything was peachy and gravy and we, as churchianity, you're saved, I raised your hand, we're done, that's all that. Well, that's great. But then I see these same people that believe that, and when they have cancer, when they have a problem, when they have a toenail, they're like, oh my gosh, right? It's, oh my, oh, why have you forsaken me? And if we're not careful, we can get that same attitude because we're not taught. We don't see the Messiah. We don't see what he is doing and what he's done, and he's continue to doing. Just like Brother said, Brother Jackson said, he's always working. He's always there. I'm going to try to get to another one at the end here of he comes and communes with us, that he talks with us, that he is there. And if he's not, then what do we have? He says, I'll go away and send the comforter. I'll send. So if we don't have that comforter, which obviously the world doesn't have, that's why there's no comfort. There's no shalom. In the morning, Yeshua was returning to the city. He was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it. But he found nothing except the leaves. May you never bear fruit again, he said. And immediately the tree withered. Now think about that. If you're not producing any fruit, if it's just leaves, if we turn this into a life story, then wow, immediately he didn't say, hey, take 7 years or take 3 years or I'm going to water you and plant you and we're going to go through a big process. There's nothing there. So there's nothing for anybody. There's no helping anything. When we help each other, when we help the world, when we do what we're supposed to do, then we have fruit. And it may only be one fruit. It may only be one person, right? We get this, I got 1,000 followers and I got, all these people and all this and all that going on. One person, one soul matters. When I first started my journey, this boy named Adam, they threw him out of church. They didn't, whatever reason, he was time consuming, I guess. He was very time consuming. But for that, basically, he wasn't a troublemaker. He didn't start fights. He didn't really bother anybody. He just prayed a lot. He would pray and be at the altar and for an hour or two, and they would shut the lights off and, go on and do their thing. But that really got to me of seeing that one soul matters, to him so much. And off of that, I think we should learn that every soul matters, every life we touch. And just like, it's like that same message keeps repeating from Brother Jackson there, that we may only touch 5, 10, 15 people, if that. They may only know us and our life. But how much of a light to the world if those few handful of people say, that person, when they prayed, there was a healing. When that person did something, when they asked from the Most High, there was an answer. There was something. And yeah, they endured life, right? If they, you look at Job, he's got it all. Well, look at Paul. He's got it all. I mean, of course he's going to praise. Of course he's going to. But when Paul has these problems, when Brother Emerson has to deal with life, then that's a testimony within itself, is it not? It's a testimony that they're persevering, they're going through something, and we're still enduring it. And again, for me personally, I don't like a lot of that. I don't like I'm carrying all these things and doing all these things. It's not fun. But no one can say you're not persevering. You're not more than a conqueror. You're not going forth. and doing something. When the disciples saw this, they marveled and asked, "How did the fig tree wither so quickly?" "Truly I tell you," Yeshua replied, "if you have faith and you do not doubt, not only will you do what was done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be lifted up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask in prayer." If you believe, how come this isn't on a plaque on every church in the United States? How come every place we go to, we don't see this verse? If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask in prayer. Now, we know that's got to be within his will. We're not going to, it's not magic. We're not going to ask for Ferraris and planes and things and they poof appear. We understand within the scriptures of what is being said. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people believe that we should have all this and more. We should be able to do all this and more. Just like Sister Valerie was saying, that some of these things, if everything was poured upon top of us, if everything was right, we would have a lot of riches. We would have a lot of ways to help other people instead of struggling and fighting. But I think that within itself shows that struggle and that fight of what we have to endure and what we have to go through. I'm going to try to change gears here just a little bit. This was from last week, and I'm going to try to put a couple of these together to prove we are not idle, and we shouldn't be idle. And sometimes when we are idle, that's where the problem becomes. Proverbs 19:15, slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Yeshua is all about moving forward. He's all about doing things, as we just seen there. Even when he come to the fig tree, if it's not producing something, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. And that's not saying that we come to a sinner and we just throw him to the side. No, a true believer, someone we have to keep our thought process onwardly looking. Is this truth rightly dividing? Is that the truth or is it not? It doesn't matter what I've been taught. I've been taught this. I've been taught this. I've been taught this. So I'm just going to stick with it because it's easy. Right? I don't want to go see Nineveh because they're all going to die anyway. So what's the point? Well, that's not my association. That's not my job, right? I mean, I don't have that right. If he says go to Nineveh, then best thing for me is get my things and head that way, because anything other is going to bring problems to me in my house. And I think that's another thing that we miss so much, that if he says it, just do it. Oh, I want to ask Brother Jackson. I want to ask, I want to get a posting of, is that okay to do? He ain't always going to work that way. He does work. We do have this Yahad. We do have these people in places and elders and Zachariah, all these, because he says so, because that's his way. There is line upon line, precept upon precept. If we do things wrong, then we're doing them wrong. But if he tells you to do such and such, the best thing you can do is just go do it. Trust me, I have a thing, it's called the boinking of the head, because many times go here, do this. It's like, oh, well, let's drag my feet. Let's not go to St. Louis. Hey, let's not do this. And hey, every excuse in the world of why I can't do that today. Yeah, I got the gas money. Yeah, I got yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I got a vehicle. And then the relapse of that is like, oh, wow. That's why I call it the bonk on the head. It's just do what he says to do, and the blessings just come with it. And the eternal blessings, it doesn't always have to have a price tag here and now. He says, put your treasures in heaven. I'll try to go through a few more, and I got one more big one at the end. Besides that, they learn to be idlers, going about from house to house. Not only idlers, but also gossips and busybodies, saying that they should not. A lot of times when we get into these loops and these things, we find out there's all kinds of problems. There's all kinds of idleness that don't help anyone, right? To talk of this, to talk of that, to do this and that and the other. It doesn't help the kingdom. It doesn't help to restore people. They just see what they see. And they're like, okay, I see what's happening here. But when we truly take the truth, and whatever truth is, it's not my truth, it's not my opinion, it's what the scriptures say that matters so much. And if I adjust myself to that, then that's what matters. That's where we grow. And sometimes adjusting to that is the growth. That's, oh man, I just don't want to do that, right? The flesh just does it. The spirits, of course, let's do this. What's wrong with you, right? What's wrong with you, simpleton? Get right. But the flesh is like, oh, no, no, no. That just isn't the way we should be doing things. Ephesians 4:28, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. We are all laborers in the field, brothers and sisters. We are laboring. Some of us, it's like Hebrew slavery, right? It's like, oh my, another whip on the back and it's going to break me. But if we continue this course, not to go left or right, we continue on this course and we go doing what he says and knowing he is there with us, knowing he is going to be there for us. He is going to be our protector, our guide, our comfort, our shalom, even when sometimes it seems like we can't go any further. So many times in the last few years, I just want to quit. It's like I am just Brother Dennis with this and with other things happening in life. It's just like I don't know if I can go much further. I don't know with all this going on, but if we just hold on and we give it to him, we can keep going. We can keep knowing that the light is Yeshua. And if that light is such a bright light, then why do we let the world and its cares bother us so much? I know we're a part of this. We like what we have. Many times we love our families. We love our relatives. But without all that pain, without the suffering, without all these problems of current times, and we don't always have to have them. I'm just saying that many times we run into these things. So lastly, but not leastly, the rule of the congregation. I tried to put this together a few weeks ago. My computer just dumped everything. It got rid of pretty much everything that I had here. So I'm going to try to go over a few of these. There's a couple in particular that I want to go over. That it talks about the rules of the congregation from the Essenes, from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Taking a stand in the congregation, anyone afflicted in his flesh, crippled in the legs, the arms, lame, blind, deaf, or dumb, or afflicted in his flesh with a defect visible to the eyes, or a tottering old man who cannot maintain himself in the congregation. We have rules of who can be and who can't be, and what it should be and what it shouldn't be. Now, what I wanted to point to is verses 8 through 12 here, in closing, of how important Yeshua is and how we are continually doing something. Those shall not come to take a stand in the congregation of the men of renown. The holy angels, that was just so resonating earlier. We talked about angels in the beginning. We talked about all the things that we're doing, all the things Yeshua's doing, all the things the Ruach is doing. It's like, wow, this is definitely what the Ruach is saying, I believe, today. The holy angels are there in the congregation, and if any man of those has a matter to speak to the holy council, they shall examine it by the words of his mouth, but that man shall not enter the gathering of the congregation, for he is afflicted. Now this is the order of the session of the men of renown, summoned for the gathering for the council of the community, if Yahweh leads. So if we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, right here, the Messiah should be. So many times we go to churchianity and they're trying to bring down the Shekinah glory, right? They're trying to bring, if that happened, they would all die anyway. So I don't know what they're trying to do. They're misled. But we know right here that who is supposed to be there? The holy angels. the holy angels. And not only just that, the Messiah is to be present with them. The priest, the head of the entire congregation of Israel, shall come along with all his brothers, sons of Aaron the priest, and summon. So I believe what this is telling me, and what I'd submit to you, we don't have to do the song and dance thing to make the holy angels and the Messiah. We just have to live the life that we are supposed to live. And when we come on the Sabbath, he's there. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. He's there waiting for us. He's there just like Moses. Moshe at the Red Sea. He come to the Red Sea and he's crying out to Yahweh. What do I do? Right? Paraphrasing. What do I do? What did he say? Why are you crying out to me? Read that verse. Why are you crying out to me? A lot of times I believe in life, and this is from, again, the last 3 years of learning the hard way, the good old bonk on the head way, I guess, the school of hard knocks. I believe a lot of times he wants us to go forth. He wants us to go forward, and he wants to see what his children are going to do. What are we about? What we have the book, we have the Torah, we have the instructions. We dig in there, we find them, and just like this, we're going over what he says. When we have them holy angels, when we have the Messiah himself, then who can come against us? What power upon this earth can be against us? Now, I heard something the other day. I'll say one more thing in closing here. Some guy was on YouTube and he was talking about, Satan ain't a very powerful adversary, that, he never went to Adam in the garden. He only went to Eve. Wow. You might want to read Job's story, because Satan put a whipping on Job, and the only thing that saved him was Yahweh. Yahweh said, don't you. So don't think without Yahweh. Don't think for a minute without the Messiah. Many times we come up and we think, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to conquer something. We see through David. We see through Moses. We see through so many scriptures. If he says go, go. But if he doesn't say go, you're on your own. Don't think he has to, a lot of times Church Indy, I think, carries around the Messiah or Jesus in their backpack, and wherever they go, he's going too. But this says the congregation, the assembly. So if we are a part of that, which I believe we all are here, then we know the Messiah is with us. And how strong is that? We don't have to worry about any enemy, any adversary, or anything we're dealing with, because ultimately we know where our home is. No more death, no more problems, no more of this nonsense. So please grow closer to the Messiah and grow closer to these words. I thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been edifying in all my ways of doing things, but praise Yahweh. I thank you all for listening to me. Shalom, shalom.
That was an excellent message, brother. Thank you. A+. And to think you got into the Dead Sea Scrolls and dug that piece out. Thank you, man.